So I understand it's always giving people opportunity and opportunity to grow. So any stories around that?
I've got a story. So I think it was, I don't know, probably about 8 years ago. This young lad comes in for an interview, and Amrit had bumped into him in Bicester.
Oh, Romel.
Yeah, bumped into him.
So basically,
In Bicester?
Yeah, in Bicester Village, there was this old suit shop which no longer exists there, which is where I used to get my suits from. You know, I'm Indian, I like a deal, and it was lovely. You know, Xenia cloth, all of that, and they were tucking it all in, and in those days I needed it tucked in, and so and he's there measuring me up, and he said, yeah, great. We'll give you a call when it's done. I gave him my card. You know, just got these new cards. And here you go. And he said, you guys provide care for my grandmum. And I was like, oh, that's nice. He's like, do you have anything going? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, any work going? I was like, no, not really, unless you want to be a carer. But it kind of looks like you're in a whole different deal here. And left it at that. But then he carried on calling me, messaging me, look, can I just come in for an interview? Don't worry about it. No, you don't have anything, but let me just see what you've got here. And I really liked that. I liked being chased like that, to be honest, because I thought, I like the energy this guy's got, right? And so he comes in for an interview. I do this interview. Nice, good. Answering questions really well.
We had a coordinator leaving at the time.
We had a coordinator leaving very randomly, and I was like, he could be a coordinator. He's very likeable. Actually, he was pretty likeable when he turned up for work.
Yeah.
And then he said, look, I've just got this one thing that I need to tell you guys about. And I was like, okay, cool. And it was just me and him in the room at the time. And he said, my DBS is going to have a bit of an issue on it. It's about theft, but I didn't steal anything and all of this. And I was like, okay. I was like, just wait here for a second. And so I got Cam and Jackie, the manager, who actually a wonderful lady. I'm still in contact with her now as well. Cam and Jackie came in and did this whole discussion with him, came back out and said, Amrit, what the hell are you talking about? I can't hire this guy. And I was like, look.
And he didn't drive.
And he didn't drive.
I was like, Amrit, we want him to be a coordinator.
I was like, look, hear me out here, you know. And I was like, look, I will call CQC. Because I was quite friendly with our inspector. I was like, let me just ask her what she thinks of this situation. I was like, but my view, and I really felt like this. I was like, look, he was a Bangladeshi boy, in his 20s, and basically about to get fired from this job for something that he got caught up in, which, anyway, and it probably wasn't. Entirely his issue and all of that kind of thing, but he just poorly influenced and so on. And I just thought, if me as an Indian MD isn't going to give this guy an opportunity, no one is, right? I kind of understand his background. Also, frankly, growing up in Hounslow and Southall, it's sliding doors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could have been in that situation really easily, and I just luckily wasn't. And I sort of just looked at that and I just thought, I really feel strongly about giving people a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance, actually, if they're willing to. And so I picked up with the CQC inspector and she said, look, do this, and he's a coordinator, and then, track him, don't let him, be in the client's house alone for this period of time, blah, blah, blah. So we did a whole piece of work around it, which Cam and Jackie loved, didn't you? And his first day he comes in 15 minutes late, and I was like, come on, right?
Yeah.
He didn't drive, and so getting to the office...
And Amrit had said to me, I don't know whether he just said this to me, but he said he's going to be driving within 6 months.
He said that.
Yeah.
That was the stipulation of employment, right? Which obviously never happened. I don't think he's 10 years on. I don't think he still drives. But and I'm still in touch with him actually, and so he worked with us. He was quite good.
He was good. He was very good with the carers.
Very
he had
charismatic.
He was always charming the carers. That he'd get them to cover calls. He was very good in so many ways. But there were still things like he was late and
he was a bit tardy.
He didn't get his driving sorted and all of that, and he always had a story for something.
The paper was a bit holy and whatever.
Yeah.
So he really tried, but it just wasn't for him. And we probably worked with him for 18 months, and I I said, look, I actually had a friend of mine who was in Oxfordshire County Council. He was in the mental health team. And I said, look, you guys have this administration role that you need filling. I've got a guy that might be really good for this. And, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. We know of him because we've called your office and he's got good telephone manner and so on. So I then went back to him and I said, look, this is not going to work long term. But what I do have is, here's a better paying job over here, closer to your house, that has a bus that comes right outside the office, right? And so he then went off, and he was very thankful actually, and he did that, and he carried on, and we're still in touch now. But you just think, I just think it's so important to give people an opportunity. It's hard to do as well, but if you don't, then no one will. Someone has to, right?
He's always finding ways, like we've got family, friends, and I he leads such a busy life, but he's always, somebody's got an issue. I know, with the Manchester lot, one of the boys, he's not been able to find a job, he's relocated, got married, and he's struggling with work. Amrit's got all his contacts with the contractors and all of that, saying, right,
he was a great business side.
It was a great business. I mean, I think, he was getting tempted that he's going to start, but he, set him up, like, do this. He obviously didn't go ahead with it, but he's always, whenever somebody comes up, he's always got answers, like plans, do this, I'll give you this, he's always out there to help people.
I think goodwill is, all you can do is circulate it, right? And whether it comes back to you or not, fair enough, but circulate it. And I think actually you feel better, rather than holding all your cards really close to your chest, just circulate it. I think, it's important.
It all comes back. How does the care industry deal with the diversity?
Yeah, I mean, I think really well. I think, there's a lot of people from really diverse backgrounds within the sector. I mean, the things I find really interesting, being the father of two daughters, I've really started to be acutely aware of women in business and so on. And actually, the higher up you get, often it is men in those roles. And I think that's like, as a father to two daughters, I'm like slightly uncomfortable by that. And so you think, well, gosh, what can everyone be doing? I think there's some great organisations, WAGs, for example, Women Achieving Greatness in Social Care. I think they do such a wonderful job for the whole thing. But also diversity from being a person of colour, an Indian person in the sector, it is really funny. I I think I told you about this. I was at the Langbuson Awards recently, and we were finalists in an award, and I was actually sitting with Lucy Campbell from Right at Home, and a couple of her team, and they'd won an award. And I was like, I'm going to go and get you a round of drinks. And I went off to the bar, get this round, taking it back, in my tux. Very nice tux, by the way, actually, And this lady stops me and says, excuse me, could you just tell me, where I need to sit, and could you just take me to my... I was like, I'm happy to tell you how to get there, because I actually know where you need to go. But just to clarify, I don't work here. She's looking at me. She's red in the face. I'm having some banter with her, and I'm very sort of relaxed about this kind of thing. And it's funny, and I get it, right? The rest of the staff team there, sponsorship licenses, everyone was Indian, and it's a really funny thing. And I think you work really hard to try to change the narrative. And certainly for me, it's important. I never knew that I cared as much about diversity. I certainly didn't growing up, frankly. It wasn't particularly diverse. It was all Indian when I grew up, It was, but I never really understood that that's an issue. I've never really had a negative experience, comical like that. And I find that comical. I know that lady didn't mean anything sort of cruel by that or anything like that. But I think, the thing for me is, how do I, in a person in my situation, how do I help change that narrative? What can I do to sort of talk about it, to normalize it, to talk about things that I can talk about that maybe others can't. The plastic wrappers on remote controls and sofas growing up in Southall, and all that kind of thing. And it's okay. It's different. A lot of people I grew up with really try to distance themselves from where they grew up. And I really lean into it because I think, gosh, if I don't, who will? There's certainly, if I look around and I look around in the home care sector, there's a couple of Indian people, certainly no one in the franchising space that I can think of. I don't know if you can, certainly in home care. And that really, I mean, it upsets me because I just think, why not? Why is this not an okay career choice, a business for that demographic of person to kind of get into? It's not something that we'd necessarily think about. And what is it? An education piece? Is it you haven't escalated in a career because of X, Y, and Z? What is it? And how do I help navigate through that? But yeah, I mean, it was a very funny story, but it did hit home and just think, gosh, in the end, this is it. This is what the subconscious thinking is.
So Cam and Amrit, lovely. What a super story to hear. And I wondered what your mother and father would think of you both, what they would say to you both.
I think they're very proud. I think they're very relieved that we're still talking to each other. I think that initially was they were a bit nervous about that. But I think they're very, very proud. I mean, my mum and dad are always showing, Amrit's always on social media. They're always sharing. They always get likes. They always get their family and friends always, calling them and saying, wow, Amrit's doing so amazing. This magazine, which I presented to them this weekend, they had tears in their eyes because, it was a really big deal, and the amount of pages are in. So they've got this out showing them. They've asked me to give them some more copies. But I think
£10 a piece. I'm not sure about that.
But they are really proud. They're really proud because from where he started, and I think sometimes parents think, oh yeah, he's just saying this. But Amrit's actually done something from nothing. He started with, came out of uni. It was a couple of months that you worked in recruitment, and then he went. When you were at the Italian restaurant, Dad's like, I can't really help you because I have no idea about this line of work. No idea. And Amrit's
on your own then, son.
Yeah. Well, basically, you did do it on your own. He has. He struggled. I don't think he ever told my dad the extent of his struggles. And I used to get upset with my dad, saying, well, you need to help Amrit more. And he goes, well, if he doesn't tell me what help he needs, and I think, but he's done so much on his own. And I think he's probably learned that from Dad, because even though Mum and Dad didn't have money, my dad was always still taking risks. Nothing in his pocket, but still doing it. I think Amrit's done that as well, nothing in his pocket, but it's always trying the next thing.
Well, I mean,
just
when you
starting
think about
franchising, I mean, that was just,
It's such an expensive endeavour. And when I was out in the Emerging Franchisor Conference in Nashville a couple of years ago, they were talking about how it costs about $1 million to start a franchising business, which I'd probably say is about right for us here as well. And you think, gosh, we've invested that over time, and it's really come from, figuring it out, and it's really brutal, but I think, it's really interesting. Indian parents, they never directly tell you. So they might tell Cam, but they wouldn't come to me and say, well done, son. It's a really funny old thing, actually. It's I'm not sure where that... Well, actually, it comes from generations of, my dad was telling me over the weekend how his dad didn't even... I do not know of one occasion where my dad hugged me. I hugged him, but not the other way around. It's that's kind of softened over generations. His great grandfather probably wouldn't have even looked at his son directly. It's all of that, and it's a really funny thing. But
our dad, the first time because we were doing some, I don't know, we were just asking Dad, when was the last time you told Granddad that you loved him and whatever? And that one time he did. My granddad, I was living in India at the time, and he called me. He goes, "Is your dad all right?" Because he's just called me and told me that he loves me.
Has he had a health scare?
Yeah. And I'm like, no, everything's fine as far as I'm concerned. And I think those sort of things, but obviously all of those things, and our parents have been a lot more loving, compared to their parents, and I think we are a bit too much.
Excessive.
And my dad, I remember him recently saying to my eldest son, because I was saying, I don't get enough hugs, blah, blah, blah. And my dad was saying, he goes, Amrit, even today, whether he comes for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or he's just going to speak to me in the car or whatever, he will always come out and give me a hug. He goes, I don't remember a time where he doesn't come and give me a hug. And I think, those sort of, because my, kids respect what my parents say more than what I say. But, those sort of little things, my dad might not say it to Amrit, but, he will say it to the kids or whatever.
And this is it. It's a really, and actually, I think that the whole sort of idea is it's not, it's the simplicity, and it's a cultural simplicity actually. And it's not about kind of blowing hot air up somebody and whatever. And I think actually it's all in the actions. And I try to teach this to my children. It's, don't tell me you're sorry or whatever. Just show me with your actions. It's all, in the end, that is all that matters. And actually in franchising as well. I can say whatever. I can sell a franchise. But show me in your actions, Amrit. What are you going to do for us? And that's it. And in the end, that's in life, it's all in the action.